We're all here today, 5 years after we were also here for the funeral for Max Steinberg. It's hard to believe that it's 5 years on the one hand. On the other hand, 5 years. So much happens during these 5 years. Before we start the actual ceremony with the rabbi, just want to mention one quick thought. It's the 17th of Tammuz, the fast day today throughout Israel and the Jewish world. And there are numerous events, tragedies, which took place on this date. And the first that took place in history is this is the date of the sin of the golden calf. And when Moses came down from Sinai and he saw what the people were doing, he broke the tablets with the 10 Commandments, the Shtabru Haluchot. And we fast and we try to atone for that sin today. When you think about that idea of he broke the tablets that God gave with the 10 Commandments, which to everyone there seemed like a catastrophe, a tragedy of the worst possible proportions. And even though that happened, the Jewish people somehow gathered the strength and they came together and we reached the point where we got new tablets and the new commandments, and the broken pieces of the 10 Commandments were actually put together in the Ark, which eventually made its way here to the Temple Mount and is somewhere there below the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The broken pieces. Because we as a people, we get broken and we suffer and there are sacrifices, but our approach is not to let that destroy us, but somehow we find the inner strength to take those broken pieces and become even stronger, and we keep them with us. We don't forget the sadness, and we don't forget the tragedy, but we enable them to make us even stronger. And when I look especially at the Steinberg family and the way they've perpetuated Max's memory in such a dignified manner, and such an inspiration how they've taken these broken tablets, the greatest catastrophe we can imagine, and with all the sadness and with all the mourning, they've taken those pieces and they've put them in the Ark and they've kept it together with them to inspire a people and inspire a nation. It's nothing short of inspirational. It's so fitting that we're here on this day when we're commemorating that event from thousands of years ago, and we're seeing Jewish people reliving that same experience here today. We'll start the ceremony with the rabbi from the Golani Brigade, Rabbi Yosef Menachem, who will lead us in the traditional prayers.
במלאת 5 שנים לנפילתו של החייל מצבא ההגנה לישראל, סמל מקס דונלד, בן הבי וסטיוארט למשפחת שטיינברג. התכנסנו כאן חברים, אנשי צבא, וכמובן משפחתו היקרה, לקיים טקס אזכרה ולהתייחד עם זכרו. תחילה נפתח בפרק ט"ז שבתהילים. מכתם לדוד שומרניאל כי חסיתי בך.
It's so fitting that the week for the memorial for Max is the week that we read the Torah portion this coming Shabbat, where we have the story of 2.5 tribes that come to Moses and they say, we'd rather not go into the land of Israel. We want to stay on the eastern side of the Jordan. And Moses says to them these very powerful words. He says, your brothers are going to go to war in Israel and you're going to stay here on the eastern side of the Jordan? And they make a deal and they say, okay, we'll go. Even though we're going to live on the other side, we're going to go fight with the people in Israel. How fitting is it that that story takes place while we're standing here to commemorate the memory of Max Steinberg? Because if there's one young man who heard that call of Moses, it's Max. How can I go back and do what I want to do back in the States when my brothers and sisters are fighting for their lives in Israel? And I have to be honest with you, when I think about Max's story, I actually feel so insignificant. When you think about what a vision of truth and what's important and what matters. I grew up in a Zionistic home and a home that supported Israel, and we sent our money and we marched in parades. And here's this young person in his 20s who cuts through all of that and says, I'm going to Israel to fight. That is an incredible, incredible lesson for all of us, and should inspire all of us to step up our game in terms of our dedication to Israel. And I speak to groups regularly, and I've told the Steinbergs this. I spoke to a group this morning here in Jerusalem, and every single group of youth that I speak to, I end with Max's story. And you see it in these eyes of these young people, how it inspires them. And I quote what it says right here: live for yourself and you'll live in vain, live for others and you will live again. And I challenge all of them, however they're going to find their way. It doesn't have to be becoming a lone soldier. But how are you going to follow Max's example and be someone who lives for others and gives of yourself so much so that you can live on and you're not just living selflessly for yourself? And I want Stuart and Evie and Paige and Jake to understand that according to our tradition, those who pass away, we just read the Hebrew letters for Max's name and then for Neshama, which means soul. The soul lives on, and according to our tradition, they can absolutely have complete awareness of what's happening here. Complete awareness. And that means that Max sees the work that you're doing and how you're doing things for lone soldiers and doing things for Israel and how you're doing things for his memory. And I can only imagine how he's looking down with pride on how his family has reacted to this and how you've taken this tragedy and turned it into something so positive for him, for his memory, for yourselves, for Israel, and for all the Jewish people. And therefore, I know that I'm speaking for so many who I've spoken to and I've heard from over the years. We want to take this opportunity to thank you for what you've done over these last 5 years and shown us how you can take this situation and, while acknowledging the sadness and acknowledging the mourning and not hiding from that at all, but also inspiring a nation and perpetuating his memory and teaching all of us who Max was and by extension who you are and how much we've learned from that. So thank you for the inspiration. We thank Max for his inspiration as well. And we gather here 2 times a year and we talk about Max and we hear about Max, and it never gets old. It's always fresh. It's always meaningful to everyone who's here. And Max's memory and the inspiration that he gives should give to him what we call an aliyah neshama. It should help his soul just elevate even further and further as he impacts all of the Jewish people and receives his reward spiritually for what he's doing for our nation. I want to call on Sam Grunberg, who's the world chairman of Keren HaYesod, the former General Counsel General in Los Angeles, and also accompanied the family from the moment that they arrived in Israel after Max was killed. Sam, Baksha.
Thank you, Rabbi Lipman. Thank you for the opportunity to the family to give me a chance to say a few words today. Stuart, Evie, Jake, and Paige. It's truly hard to believe that it's been 5 years. So many things have happened during the course of these 5 years. And before I reflect on just a couple of those things, I do want to acknowledge the presence of the officers here from the IDF and the soldiers here from Golani and from other places of the IDF. It means a lot to see you here, and I know that there are also family members of other lost soldiers, fallen soldiers, and bereaved families. Varda is here, and if there are other family members and other families that are here, we want to acknowledge you as well. And pay tribute to all the soldiers and all the fallen soldiers during this difficult time around all of the yard sites and the askarot that are taking place during these days around Protective Edge. And I know that I speak for everyone when we wish an aliyah neshama to all of the soldiers and pay a tribute and give great thanks to all of them. It's been 5 years since I met you, the Steinberg family, coming off of the airplane, which was your first time visiting Israel. And you know, 5 years, it's really hard to believe. As Rabbi Lipman mentioned, we were standing here. I'll never forget the calls for action to the public, because there was concern that this family coming to Israel for the first time, never having been to Israel, not able to speak a word of Hebrew, not having any family here, and the concern, and of course the fighting and the war was still taking place, and the concern that nobody would show up. I remember Evie, you were recalling this story, I think a couple of weeks ago when we were together, when we were together in Poland for March of the Living a few weeks ago. And as Rabbi Lipman mentioned, I was one of the casualty officers who accompanied the family during that time. And as we approached in a minibus to Mount Herzl, we got stuck in traffic and there was a big commotion. And Evie looked at me and said, thinking of course it had nothing to do with Max's funeral, saying, what is all this about? What is all this for? And I don't know exactly when it sunk in, but when it sunk in that the 30,000 people from all over the country came to be with all of you, it was such a powerful moment. And you know, Max's loss is a tremendous tragedy, personally, nationally. I truly believe, though, that it's incredibly unusual to think of the impact that Max has had, that his legacy continues to have, not only on the family, but on Israel, on the society in Israel, and on the Jewish people around the world. I've seen and experienced it here in Israel, and certainly in my years in Los Angeles with you, I've seen the impact that it has on the community there. And you know, we've spent a lot of time going back to the very beginning, that first day when you landed in Israel, when I met, and we went off to a room inside Ben Gurion Airport. If you think about the journey that you've been on, and I'm sure you're still on, and the fact that I've been able to not only witness it but be a part of it with you. I mean, to think that it wasn't even clear that day that Max would be buried in Israel, and then of course that he would be buried here, and then whether you would hold a shiva, and of course you held a shiva, and from one thing to the next, to think of to even think that back then to where we are today and where you are today is unbelievable. You know, we've talked a lot in the 5 years that we've known each other about the Jewish tradition and Jewish traditions, and it makes me think, as we stand here today, you know, there are a lot of different things that are done and practiced in part of customs of Jewish traditions, especially when it comes to death and mourning and cemeteries. And you may or may not know, but one of the things is when you visit a cemetery, as part of our tradition, there is a custom that you leave the cemetery physically in a different path than the one that you entered in. And like everything else in the Jewish tradition, I'm sure there are several different explanations for it. But the one that really speaks to me, and I think is so appropriate for today, is one explanation that I heard for that custom, is that the reason why when you enter and leave a cemetery, you leave a different way, is to symbolize the fact that you're not the same person, that the impact of the life of the person who you're visiting, you're mourning, you're going for an askara or a funeral, the impact that that person had on you and on society and on the Jewish people was so significant that you can't possibly go in the same person that you were when you left. And I could tell you, Stuart, Evie, Jake, and Paige, that I think that symbolism is so appropriate here, because for all of us, and we've seen this in Israel and around the world, that the impact in already such a short time, and it's going to continue, the impact that Max's legacy has had in 5 years has changed everyone who's touched Max. Not only those that he had the chance, he had the opportunity to encounter when he was alive, but even people like myself. I never met Max, but as you know, I'm part of the family now, whether you like it or not. And I feel like he's impacted my life, and I know from speaking to many others, you don't have to be as close as we are to have that same kind of impact. And so I hope that, I know that it won't take away from the great pain and the great loss, but my hope and my blessing is, though, that Max's strong legacy will, however, give you comfort and inspiration, and also a lot of pride. I know that just from looking at the four of you and the various things that you're now involved in, to think that you, as I mentioned, had never visited Israel before. You know, you said yourselves, connection to the Jewish community in Los Angeles, then compared to now. Both you, Stuart and Evie, are on boards of organizations that help founded organizations that care for lone soldiers, involved with many different programs and projects that have to do with Israel, with Jewish life, whether it's in Los Angeles or whether it's here. And of course, Paige has been here for the last 4 to 5 years studying. Jake is involved with AIPAC in Israel, and this is just 5 years. So my wish for us on Max's 5th Yortzeit is that we should take a lot of pride and comfort in the legacy that he leaves for all of us, and he'll continue to be an inspiration, and the four of you will continue to be an inspiration for all of us. Yehi zichro baruch. May his memory be a blessing.
As I'm sure everyone knows, Max came to Israel first on a birthright trip together with Paige and Jake, and we'd like to call upon Pam, who was madricha in Taglit, to share some words in Max's memory.
I'm going to try not to use the microphone. Can everyone hear me? Okay, I have a pretty loud voice. It's crazy that it's been 5 years of his death, and it's 7 years since our birthright trip. And running into Kevin today, I had him as a participant 10 years ago, and I have very little memory of that. So to say that Max stuck with me is bizarre. I've staffed probably about 13 to 18 trips, and there was something about Max from the phone call that stuck. And what stuck was that he had no desire to speak to me. I spoke to Jake, I spoke to Paige, and then I called Max, and I got a whole lot of nothing. And I had this idea about him. Like, oh, he's going to be that kid on Birthright. And for all of you that know Taglit and know Birthright, these Americans are crazy. We get to the airport. Paige is exactly what she sounded like. Bubbly, fun. Jake, philosophical, educational. A man of few words. And then there was Max. In a Rastafarian sweatshirt, khaki shorts, and Birkenstocks, walking as slow as a snail. He's like, here we go. Birthright number 13. And on that trip, Max's connection to Israel, what I remember the most, was the candy. And I have the best picture of him and Paige with candy coming out of their mouths. You told Max to be on the bus at 1 o'clock. At 1:15, he showed up with candy and a smile. But with candy for the entire bus. So it worked. What I remember about that birthright trip was wanting Max to connect to something other than candy and ice cream. And the night before we visit Har Herzl and Yad Vashem, we showed the story of Michael Levine, a hero in heaven. And after that documentary, there was something so different in Max's eyes, and I wish that I had a word to describe it. At the end of that documentary, Max stood up and shook every single soldier's hand that was on that birthright trip. And when he told me at the bottom of those steps down there by the bathrooms that he was going to make Aliyah and join the IDF, I have to be honest, I laughed. Because if you asked me from that trip who was going to be in Israel post-trip, it would not have been Max, it would not have been Paige, and it would not have been Jason. But they all came. I remember when Max told me that he was moving to Israel, sent me an email, said call me, I booked a flight. And for a minute I stared at the screen and I said, this is a joke. But then I got here, and he was here, in uniform. Here was my Max, this big, huge, infectious smile, telling me stories of the IDF, and I was blown away. I was blown away by his dedication. I was blown away by his passion and his want to meet a birthright group. And what his request was something, unfortunately, I was not able to fulfill. All Max wanted to do was meet a birthright group as a soldier in the IDF. But he didn't want to meet them like the Mifgash on the trip. He wanted to meet them on day 1 or 2. He wanted to speak to them about passion and about dedication and about finding something you really believe in and making the most out of life. And I promised him that he can come and meet a group. It was the summer of 2014. It was July, and we made arrangements for him to come. And that morning he called me and told me he couldn't. And my first question to him was, what did you do? Because Max always found himself in some type of trouble. Little trouble, but trouble. He said to me, I can't come, and when I asked what he did, he went silent. And he told me that he was going south. And I didn't understand it, or I didn't want to understand it because his base was in the north. So I made up all these questions that I just didn't want to know the answers to. I promised him when he got out, he could meet a group. And then I got a phone call while I was getting my nails done. Thank you, Michael. Asking me if I was in touch with the family and if I had their contact information. And even though they told me nothing, I knew. I made up some excuse of why I needed to call them back. But by then I had seen it on the news. So we never got to meet that group. But I will tell you that he and his story are seen by every single group that passes through here. Everybody that comes on Taglit, American, Brazilian, everybody, Russian, you guys, there was a Russian group here hearing Max's story a half an hour before the yard site. Everybody hears his story, and not only do they hear his story, they leave so inspired by it. For those of you that have seen the synagogue in Arbel that was dedicated in his name a year after his passing, that has also become a staple in Birthright's itineraries. And it's very hard because the participants go there on day 1 or day 2. And how do you sit there and talk about Max and his life and the IDF when they've only been in this country for day 1, day 2? It's difficult. So what we've done is we've asked them to think about something that they are passionate about something that they believe in. And going through the 10 days of the trip to remember that. And when they come here and they hear the story of Max, it's full circle. So I really do believe that 5 years later, this is not about his death. It's about his life. It's about the legacy that he left and the friendship that he has with everybody that's here. Whether you knew him personally or through stories or through memories. I am lucky and honored to know the Steinbergs. I mean, Jake and Paige were mine on my trip. You too, Kevin. Evie and Stu, you've become like family to me. They say with time things get easier, and I will tell you that I'm here twice a year. And I try to come here when nobody's here, which is almost impossible, because there's always somebody here. I get the same shortness of breath and that anxious feeling but I know that smile, and it's with me every single day in everything that I do. So I hope that Max's inspiration stays within all of you, and that you guys keep doing what you're doing, because you are rocking it like no other. Everybody knows the story and everybody knows your name, and I love you for that.
Thank you, Pam. Pam mentioned the memorial for Max at the Arbel, which is one of Max's favorite places when he was here. I do want to acknowledge there's the presence of representatives from the JNF that are involved in that memorial and that path in the Arbel. I'm going to call on Max's father, Stuart.
Thank you, Rabbi. Well, it's a tough act to follow. 3 of my favorite people. Rabbi, I love that you know this, right? Sam and Pam, thank you so much. Well, it was 5 years ago. Max was killed, and our new normal began. My promise as a father to protect him and keep him safe had been shattered. My thoughts, dreams, beliefs, and vision for his future were forever gone. Within 24 hours of learning that Max was killed, my family, including Vilma, were on a flight to Israel. As you heard, before leaving Los Angeles, we had to make the impossible decision to bury Max. Actually, we did make the decision, Max, in Los Angeles now. A little small correction.
I knew it.
Okay, but
You corrected me the other day, and I was
yeah,
like,
we made the decision because it needed to be made there. Arrangements had to be made, and so we had to make a decision in Los Angeles. And as I shared with everybody here, yes. Evie and I had never been to Israel, so it was a very hard decision to make. I didn't even know what a Sefer Torah was until Max was killed, and our local Jewish community was inspired to raise the funds to have one written in our beloved Max's memory. 5 years ago, I didn't know what the March of the Living organization was, that they organized an international delegation of 10,000 strong to come to Poland for their annual march to commemorate and remember the loss of over 6 million Jewish lives during the Holocaust. I had no thoughts of going to Poland to see concentration camps, death camps, and mass graves of millions of Jews killed during the Holocaust. Max's death inspired March of the Living to invite our family to join them this year. We welcome the opportunity to participate in the march, and we proposed that we bring Max's Sefer Torah to be part of the journey. March of the Living embraced the idea, and our delegation from Los Angeles, IAC, and Sinai Temple, with Max's Torah in arms, led the march in Poland. The Sinai Temple delegates that marched with us in Poland are represented here by our new friend, Rona. Did you ever find it? Oh, good. There you go, Rona. You found us. That's great. We waited as long as we could. I'm glad you found us. And anyways, thank you so much, Rona, for helping us perpetuate Max's legacy. It was really important to us. Evie Page and I returned to Jerusalem with Max's Sefer Torah and March of the Living to lead another 5,000 more people on Independence Day from City Hall to the Kotel. Many of you here today joined us for what was truly, for me, the most important and meaningful moment since Max's funeral. When the decision was made to have Max's Sefer Torah lead the March of the Living from Birkenau to Auschwitz, it was Sam Grunberg, that flew from Israel to Poland with the Torah to join us. Sam, you know we love you, and we love your beautiful family. Thank you for always being there for us. 5 years ago, I lost a son, and the feelings of that loss have not lessened in all this time. I think about him every day and get inspired to live, perpetuate his legacy. 5 years ago, I did not know the term lone soldier, even though Max was a lone soldier. Today, I am chairman of the board of Families of Lone Soldiers, and Evie is an active board member along with me. We work tirelessly to support families of lone soldiers by connecting a community and building bridges with mission partners, including the IDF, to make sure that no family and no lone soldier is ever alone. We are grateful to the Tiglit Birthright for dedicating a memorial site as a tribute to Max at the historic ancient ruins at Mount Arbel Pam just spoke about. Kitty Mark, who is unfortunately unable to be here today, is the CEO and met us recently, just a few days ago, at Mount Arbel with a Birthright group, and it was just amazing, and I thank Kitty very much for his leadership at Tiglit Birthright. And I thank you, Pam, and I thank all the Tiglit Birthright group leaders that continue to tell Max's story right here and at Mount Arbel. Lastly, I want to recognize my family. Paige, your strength to move to Israel and stay for 5 years to be with Max and earn your master's degree at IDC is nothing short of amazing. And Jake, the work that you have done and have been doing at AIPAC for the past 3 years is making such a positive impact for Israel. Incredible. Thank you for your dedication and your hard work. And Evie, you've been nothing short of amazing. You've become such a strong Zionist and advocate for Israel. I know Max is smiling, big and proud, and that we are all trying to make a difference in the lives of others. It is what he did when he was alive and what he has continued to do by making the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you everyone here for celebrating Max's life and honoring the true hero. Max, my dear Max, may you rest in peace with the knowledge that you are truly loved and admired.
Max's sister, Paige.
Perhaps I won't finish reading. When thinking about what to say today, I was like, what can I share that hasn't already been said? My memories of Max will forever stay the same, and the absence of him gone will never be filled. I watched something the other day, and this woman talked about how losing someone is not something you just move forward from. It's not a moment in time you simply move past, and it's not quite something you understand until you're sitting at the front row of a funeral. The people we lose who are so close to us.
Oh, you got it. She actually asked, will I do it? Will I finish it if she can't? And I'm not doing that right now. So.
Unbelievable. Alright. The people we lose who are so close to us still feel so present when we think of them. Max's presence is in all that we do. Jake works with AIPAC, my move to Israel, my parents work with families of lone soldiers, so there's no moving on. We can only move forward with him, and that's what we've been doing. It hasn't been easy, but I'm learning life just doesn't get easier. We miss Max every day, and there's so much I wish I could tell him.
Okay. But I'm also so thankful for some of the things his sacrifice brought to my life. Especially those of you who are here today. Some of you knew him well. And others... You're gonna kill me. And others know him through the stories told about him.
Domi are the best too. But all of you have been there by our side in one way or another, and I can't express my gratitude enough. As many of you know, I moved here after Max died a couple months. And I am now returning to LA on August 6th. To be honest, I wasn't sure how, Paige wasn't sure how she felt when she moved here, and I don't know how she feels about returning. I literally don't. Either way, she did follow her heart. And this move home, following... Yeah, I mean, come on, this is crazy. What are you doing?
We'll just move to the next line. Israel has my heart, and I definitely have Max to thank for that. This has been an insane journey for me these past 5 years in Israel. I may be leaving with 2 degrees, but what I'm really leaving with is the deepest connection to Israel, a closer connection to Judaism, friendships I couldn't imagine life without, an Israeli boyfriend, a tougher backbone, because I was really pushed around when I first moved here, and life experiences who made me become the person I am today. On my toughest days, I always think of Max and his strength, and especially his smile. Thank you everyone for your continuous support, and thank you Max for this journey you took me on.
That was yours.
That was good. You'll make a step. This really is Max's second mom, definitely. Thank you. I really just want to express gratitude, and I always do when I come here, but it does blow my mind that you know, this amount of people still come. And I shouldn't be surprised. Again, 30,000 people was a lot of people, but it's awesome. It is so meaningful and beautiful to see everyone here. Old friends, new friends. Pam's mentioned Kevin, he's a good guy. My buddy Jeff's here too, good to see you. Rona, shout out to you as well. But you know, the people that have been with us for all this time, Sam, I mean, really, you're the man. You're good too. Everyone's great. And you know, I reflect back on this year. I can't imagine 5 years. It's insane. But you know what? I do look at Max. I look at this picture, and I am getting older. I am older than him. I look at it, and it's wild. It's messed up too. But no, not that I'm getting older. That he's not as old as me. But this has been a crazy year. I mean, and this journey, and this is why I'm always so grateful about Max. I have so much gratitude for the amount of purpose and meaning that he's inspired in my own life, and my parents' life, everyone's life. I know everyone says that, but it's true. We do so many interesting, amazing, heartwarming things that bring so much clarity to our day-to-day lives. The fact that I went to Poland this year and really got to internalize what this place is. The meaning of it, why this place is so important. Look, Israel's more important not just because of the tragedies of our history, but that type of context can't be taken out of the way that we look at it. And you know, the fact that I know that you know, Max, you know, my brother, you know, fought for and died for this place, is it's just there's nothing that could be more motivating. And it's weird to say that, but he gave it all, and you know, all of us, we need to give some, and it's just, you know, like, this is a unique time that we're living in, and for him to make that very clear to me, to know that we can all do something, and be a part of this amazing place, and continue to make sure that it could be as beautiful as it can be, is a beautiful gift he's given me. And you know, I just again, thank you. And thank you to my parents for being rocks. This stuff that we do is not easy. To be involved in work and do things all the time that are so connected to something that was brutally tragic is not easy, but it is something that I think we take purpose over denial, ignorance, and bliss. And we're all doing our best. And so for Paige, I'm so excited that you're finally coming back home. I'm still envious that I have not had this experience that you've had of being here for 5 years, and hopefully I can live here at some point. But we're all going to continue doing our thing. We all have an amazing support group, clearly, and you know, onward. But as we go onward, I think back, and I always have to think about Max, and I think about him every single day. And I'm a lucky younger brother to have his memory. Thanks, guys.
Max's mom, Evie.
Well, it's been another crazy year. So much has changed, and yet so much has not. What hasn't changed, and never will, is how much I love you. And how much I long for you, Max. Grieving is a crazy, unpredictable, it's a constant work in progress. There's no right, there's no wrong. 1 minute I can experience joy and laughter, and the next minute I can go into a very dark place. Those are the moments I dread. Those moments when my heart physically aches and I have to catch my breath because I know that I'm never going to hear your voice. Still, you have not been in my dreams. Not going to see your silly smile or be able to hold you. But I'm actually glad I've said this before, but it's 5 years later, and I'm glad I haven't had you in my dreams because I'm so fearful of waking up to realize that I was just dreaming and that you're gone again. I'm finding that some of my toughest times are my trips to Israel, yet they're also my happiest. I love it here. When I return to LA, I immediately begin the countdown until my next trip to Israel, so I can come spend time with you, Max, and Paige, of course. It's complicated. Though it is bittersweet, I'm always happy to be here with you. It's hard to have alone time with you. There's always a group wanting to visit you and to hear your story. I still can't say no. But that's why you're here, right? You belong to Israel. Mount Herzl is by far one of my favorite places. I feel you and all the other heroes, the best of Israel, are here and all throughout the cemeteries in Israel. Everywhere I go, excuse me, sorry. But that's why you're here, right? You belong to Israel. Mount Herzl is by far one of my favorite places. As I said, I feel you and all the other heroes. But I'm still struggling with never experiencing Israel with you. Everywhere I go, I wonder if you were there. It still pains me that I never saw you in uniform wearing your coveted Golani beret. I never experienced a weekend off base with you. Nor did I ever witness you speaking Hebrew. Or at least your attempt to. Well, I did hear you speak to people when we were on the phone. You did suck. In Tel Aviv, which I know you love, we never got to hang out at the beach, eat at Falafel Goodbye. I didn't even get to eat one of your favorite popsicles, your watermelon ones. And shit, right now, I'd give anything to watch you have one of your major temper tantrums, especially when dealing with Israeli bureaucracy, in Hebrew no less. That would have been priceless. But life is for the living. It goes on, no matter what, right? When one loses a child, that child will always remain in one's mind the age they were upon their death. Max, you will always be 24 years old to me. But then reality bites when I see your army buddies. Your commander, Ariel, whom I adore, is happily married now to Shahar. Both are in medical school and have a beautiful baby girl, Roni, is it pronounced? Yair, where are you? Max, your partner for 8 months, whom I also adore, is now married to a lovely lady, and I'm convinced you're behind it because now I have a translator. Sam and Do, you must be relieved. Philip's married with 2 beautiful children. Back in the States, Ryan and Teddy are engaged. And back in our neighborhood, Fred is married, Corey's engaged, and Snyderman. He became a licensed therapist. Yep, Snyder. Who knew? The list goes on, but why? Because life goes on. Therefore, so must mine. And it is. And who inspires me and keeps me going? Jake and Paige. And you, Max. You're with me every single day. Whether I feel happiness or sorrow, you are cheering me on, just as you cheered everybody else on. Gratitude, I have so much for you. You continue to give me so much strength. I'm doing things now that I could never have done before losing you. One of which is public speaking, as in speaking in front of audiences of thousands, including at AIPAC's policy conference in Washington, D.C. Jake, who you know works for AIPAC, well, we spoke together in D.C. and several other states. At times, it was nerve-wracking, but I promised you that I'd do anything I could to help Israel and the Jewish people. Before I go on stage, I always said to myself, if you can move to Israel, having no family or friends, not understand or speak Hebrew, join the IDF, and be willing to sacrifice your life, then I sure as hell can speak in front of a bunch of people. And once on stage, I would kiss your tag. It instantly empowers me, and it always will. And it's my preferred piece of jewelry. You know how much I love jewelry, but this is it. It only comes off when I shower. Pride? Well, I've always been proud of you, long before we lost you. But never have I been more proud than recently when our family, thanks to Wilshire Sinai, Akiva Academy, and ISC, helped us realize a dream. Our dream of someday taking the Sefer Torah, written and dedicated to you, to Auschwitz in Poland. Max, because of you, our family was chosen to lead the 10,000 people on March of the Living out of Auschwitz. Carrying your Sefer Torah out on the death camps and actually walking on the train tracks that once transported millions of Jews and others to be dehumanized, tortured, starved, and murdered just because the Nazis were so hateful and pure evil, well, it was gratifying. That moment, I was so proud of you. This is the flag that I wore in Auschwitz while we were carrying Max's Sefer Torah. Carrying your Sefer Torah out of the death camps. As I said, walking on the tracks that transported the millions of Jews and others to be dehumanized was so difficult, but like I say, it was so gratifying. It gave never again even more meaning. We've all heard the horror stories, but to actually be there and hear what was witnessed and endured from an actual Holocaust survivor, well, there are truly no words. Following our trip to Poland, Stuart, Paige, and I continued on to Israel for Yom HaZikaron. Sadly, Jake returned to the States because of work. I know Stuart's already said some of this, but sorry. On Independence Day, our family, along with some of Max's beloved Golani brothers in arms, which was incredibly emotional and meaningful, Rabbi Dov Lipman's family, some of FLS's board members, many other friends, and about 4,000 others marched through Jerusalem. We carried Max's Sefer Torah from City Hall into the hotel. But to see Stuart dancing with the Torah at the wall with Dov and several Golan Czechs was priceless. To come from the darkness of Auschwitz to the light of Israel is an experience I will never forget. And Max, you were with me every step of the way. Oh, and I carried your Thrash backpack. It's right down here. The one I got you before you went on Taglit in 2012, and you continue to use all throughout your travels in Israel and throughout your army service. You know, the ones your friends told you to trash. I now travel through Israel with it. You would have been so proud. There was a time when Israel had no army to defend herself, but those days are long gone. Max, you, the over 23,700 soldiers who sacrificed their lives, those who have served, some of you are here today, and those who are presently serving to make sure that we never again be defenseless. You all make me so proud. Thank you for your service. For me, the fight for Israel, it can be exhausting. Having to contend with all the lies and propaganda on a daily basis, it's very frustrating. Yes, anti-Semitism has always existed, but of recent it has escalated to even greater proportions all over the world. I've never seen it like this in my lifetime. It's very scary. I'm too old for combat on the battlefield, but my weapon is knowledge of the truth and my big mouth, which is fearless at times. I'm sure I've lost a lot of friends over it, but I don't care. I've gained so many more wonderful friends with far more substance, people who are willing to fight with me, because history tends to repeat itself. The Jewish people have a right to be safe. Israel must exist. And as difficult as it is for us bereaved parents and families, we must honor our fallen children. How? Not just by coming to cemeteries on Yom HaZikaron or yard sites, but by living well, celebrating Israel's freedom and independence, growing our families, continuing to develop Israel, helping her flourish. Because if we don't, Max and all of our children who fought and died for Israel would have died for nothing. And I won't be a part of that. Thank you, Max, for continuing to inspire me and the Jewish people throughout the world. The meaningful experiences of the past 5 years, they would have never happened had we not lost you. Of course, I'd rather give anything and everything up to have you back, but that's not going to happen. I often hear your simple words. It is what it is. Life gave us lemons, so we're going to make the best lemonade that we possibly can. I want to thank my husband who tirelessly keeps our family on track. And Stuart is now the chair for the nonprofit, which is closest to our hearts, Families of Lone Soldiers. And we are helping to make sure that soldiers and their families have support before, during, and after their Army service. And of recent, we have lost too many lone soldiers. Some possibly due to lack of emotional support, we don't know, but we're working hard to help rectify that. I want to thank my two fabulous kids, Jake and Paige, for being so strong and honoring their brother by living their lives well, which Max would insist on. I also want to express how proud I am of Jake's continued hard work for AIPAC and to congratulate Paige for completing her master's program at IDC. I'm thrilled to have her finally back home, but I would be lying if I wasn't a little sad that Max will no longer have an immediate family member here in Israel. But I know he won't be alone, thanks to Israel and all of you. Vilma, thank you. Vilma was Max's second mother. She's lived with us and been with our families since Max was 2 years old, right? He was 18 months. I was pregnant with Jake when Vilma came to our family. And when Max died, she insisted of coming. She came for the year anniversary, and she decided to come also now. Thank you, Dove. You always have the right words. You're always there for us. Pam, thanks for always your funny, great Max stories. Sam, our dear friend, the brother I always wanted. 5 years later, and you're still our go-to guy, and you'll always be my security blanket. Leora, who still comes here every month to make sure Max's place is cleaned up. There's many more to thank, but I've overstayed my welcome. So thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time out of your day to come and remember our beloved son, brother, friend, and a hero, our Sergeant Max Steinberg. Thanks, you guys.
Everyone can please rise. Rabbi Menachem will lead us in the memorial prayer.
מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים וינוח בשלום על משכבו ויעמוד לגורלו לקץ הימין ונאמר אמן.
That concludes the ceremony. Thank you everyone for coming. May Max's memory be a blessing for all.